few minutes.
Oh, and then I just accidentally opened up.
Catch up. Yeah. How long?
That clock in my watch still have a couple of minutes. Well, let's see. You're the last
Is
conversation.
that a goodie?
Another vendor, but the clock was not ticking, so.
Yeah, I had a little clock from a seal that's already stopped working.
My DNA calendar is going strong.
The last one is still going strong.
You're on campus.
I think photograph Mary. It's her favorite thing to be. You're going to tag all these CALI 208 on Flickr?
We have to do CALI Con 08.
Oh, okay.
Because somebody used CALI 2008 for their vacation pictures in California.
We mixed in. They're like, okay, here's a session, and here's someone in a Speedo.
Is that going to need a registration of some kind where you have to like figure out who's going to grab the tag first for the thing that you want to do?
Flickr tag squatting.
Well, in the interest of sort of getting started on time, so we can end on time and everything, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Elizabeth Farrell. I am a research and instructional technology librarian at Florida State College of Law. Florida State Law, or is that what we're calling ourselves?
We're rebranding and we're not sure where we were.
So, we're that big school in Tallahassee. This is my colleague,
garnet and gold one.
This is my colleague Mary Dell, research librarian, and obviously I didn't have space on the PowerPoint slide for the entire title, but really what we are talking about today is fads and jumping on the IT bandwagon, jumping off, if it's stuff that, just trying to figure out, we we hear so much about what's going on in the tech world, what's going on in the library world, all these cool trends and what's worth jumping onto, what's not. And so that's what we're sort of going to focus on today. And so in the interest of sort of setting up the playing field,
Come on in.
yeah, what our session is not about, is we are not a Web 2.0 party right now. And not to say that we don't love some of these awesome tools and what, I have Flickr accounts and I have Facebook's account and LinkedIn, and we use all these tools. But, we didn't want to turn this into we love X product versus Y product, because really we have so many divergent needs and interests for what we do that, different tools work for different people. So we're not really talking specifically about products that we are recommending. We're going to talk a little bit about our experiences with various things. So what we are about is...
Well, this is what we are about. Okay, we really want to talk about what is a good decision-making process. We're fortunate in that we have something called FCLA money. And that is a technology fund that the state of Florida disperses to all of the state university system universities. And so we kind of hear about things and we say, ooh, that sounds fun, let's buy that. Or, oh, is it the deadline? Let's buy some stuff. So that's not always the best way to do things. I don't know if you've heard. So we want to talk about a better decision-making process. We want to talk about maybe some best practices, not hard and fast rules, but just things that we've observed that, and through trial and error, and not always making the right decision, but sometimes coming out on top. We like to talk about best practices for these kind of applications in IT. And then mostly we want to tell you about our experiences at FSU, because I think they're funny and weird, and I've been there long enough to see when things go pear-shaped and when they work, and that's fun for me. Even though I'm right now kind of sitting on the sidelines as I'm a head of circulation, and I'm a lot of faculty research. In my previous incarnation, I was the electronic services librarian. I have a bachelor's of MIS, and I'm actually in the master's of MIS program at Florida State right now. So even though Elizabeth does our instructional technology work and we have an electronic services librarian, I like to put my binoculars out and kind of like survey what's going on at kind of a meta level. And so that's what we would like to talk about. And also, I wanted to mention at this juncture, we'd love it if you have questions to kind of jump right in. We don't really want to wait till the end, I would say, because we might have forgotten what we've talked about a half an hour earlier. So just hop right in with questions.
Questions, or if you guys have any kind of
comments, definitely.
Yeah, examples of stuff that you've seen at your schools, and just, everyone loves a good story about how, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, so please feel free to share that as we go along. A lot of times, starting with, what we have done in the past, and what sometimes, you hear about these new trends. In fact, Web 2.0, I think it's sometimes kind of hackneyed as far as, everything's Web 2.0. But there's a lot of cool tools, and it's sort of, are you on X? Or are you doing Y? And sometimes there's not a lot of thought process, and so sometimes a common strategy sort of for picking things out is this. And apologies for the South Park reference if you get it. If you don't, disregard the slide. But really, we're kind of joking here. The common strategy, sometimes it's like, we have to be on this, we have to be on Facebook, and it's going to make, and it's going to change our world, it's going to do everything for us. But where's the step, where's phase 2? Where have you thought out how it's going to change things, or how it's going to make things better? And so that's sort of what we're going to talk about. So instead of, sort of using the common strategy, that sometimes will result in failure, is we're going to sort of break it down into 3 steps, sort of awareness and investigation. Step 2, analyze, and I put it big bold because that's really going to be the body of what we're talking about today. And to step 3, to communicate it. So in the interest, sort of starting off with awareness and investigation.
Yeah, that's my part. Okay, so awareness and investigation, I was sitting there thinking about keeping up with trends and sharing the knowledge, and some of the things that we do that has started to work, or that we're excited about, is keeping up with trends. We're really kind of trying to gather names of things. Every day we come in and I hear about, are you on Twitter? Are you on MySpace? Are you on this or that different application? And that is not something always that I've heard of or Elizabeth has heard of. It may come from one of our librarians that is not comfortable with technology, but she's just heard this thing. And so one of the things that we've done is try to, first of all, gather those items, and we've begun to have during our weekly meeting, a half hour, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, of just somebody presenting what that thing is. So we've had presentations on Flickr and Facebook, and there's some of the other ones that we've done.
So sometimes, we we've touched on some of the Web 2.0, Flickr, what is Flickr, what is Facebook, so, but some of them, it's just, we need to bring people up to speed on, just a couple weeks ago, someone presenting on Vista, just how is Vista and, the various Microsoft Office 2007 things, how are they different than what we're currently using? And that's really some serious value to, as a way of introduction. We have a lot of people that are pros at what they're already doing, and so they don't need to go sit through some sort of day-long training. This is Office 2007, but just say, hey, this is how things are set up, and when you get in your computer, you're going to see this is a little bit different. So,
in fact, one of the things that we like about this really short, kind of 15 to 20 minute, here's this technology, is that some of our bosses tend to get if they have to sit through a real training session, they get bored. They get a little antsy. So, and the thing is, we're not using all these technologies, but we're ready. And I think that's one of the kind of the standing on the sidelines kind of, if the dean has decided one day, and this happened fairly recently, Elizabeth set us up on Facebook, and we had the usual grumblings from some of the librarians, why are we doing this? And we said, let's give it a try. We had gone through the process of trying to figure out, is this something that we're just jumping onto blindly? Are other schools doing it? What's the value of it? And we came down on the side of, let's give it a try. Well, sure enough, what was it, like a week and a half or 2 weeks later, the dean of our law school said, Facebook, we should be on it. And lo and behold, we were already on it. So fortunately, we were like 2 weeks ahead of the curve on that edict. But that just goes to show you that we looked good. We were, Elizabeth went over and showed the dean how to set up his Facebook page, which is a great experience. And so he was happy with us. And he didn't have any idea that just about 2.5 to 3 weeks earlier, we really didn't. Elizabeth had used Facebook before, but I didn't have a clue. And so that's the kind of thing where we jumped on, but we really thought about it. Maybe if we hadn't started that process, it would have at least been good to have maybe Elizabeth and one other person know that application, be ready to spring into action. Sometimes I feel like we're all kind of, sitting there waiting for the next thing to come down. And there's so many applications. There's so many different individual types of larger applications. So when somebody says to me, and to be quite honest, right now if somebody says, are you on Twitter? I don't even really know what that is. I hate to admit that. But if somebody tells me, what's the larger application of Twitter? Is it document sharing software? Is it photo sharing software? There's a larger application type that all of these, kind of names are under. And if you can get comfortable with those larger application types, then I think, especially for faculty and for librarians that are not that comfortable with IT, if you can get them comfortable with the application type, then you can get them more to buy in quicker. We have a few librarians that have been at our law school for 25, 30 years, and when we say things like Second Life, they go, and they're not happy. And we're trying to make them happy about it, because I can guarantee you that once these things start to expand and the dean says, I saw this great thing, it's called Second Life, we're on it, we have to be ready. And that means all of us have to be excited about it. So,
and if I could jump in there too, it's sort of like, it's getting, talking about, there's some long timers, and not to disparage the long timers, but they say, Second Life. But I think one of the main accomplishments of what we've been able to achieve, sort of having, sort of little briefings on these different technologies, is that they're not going second life, huh? They actually, we can speak a common language, or, even if they aren't up on it and using it, they know how, they're talking the same talk. Like one example I have that's perhaps more, my field of instructional technology, that, we have just recently started using Captivate, Adobe Captivate, which allows you to create these really cool sort of interactive tutorials on web-based interactive tutorials. And, not everyone is going to learn how to use Captivate, but if, I have fellow librarians and colleagues saying, oh, they don't know necessarily how to use Captivate, but they know what it's capable of, and they say, hey, we could set this up on Captivate, couldn't we? Or we could set up like a Camtasia, which is somewhat similar, or like a voice over PowerPoint. And they might not necessarily know how to use everything, but we're talking all the same language. So that's kind of one of the main benefits of sort of staying up on it and then sharing it, is that you don't necessarily have to be tech geeks, but you can all talk the same language. So.
We like being tech geeks, but not everybody else that we work with does. So that's one of the, like Elizabeth said, one of the most important things that we found in trying to get everybody on the same page. And one of the most important things that I found is that you never know who the librarian is that's going to run into the important person that wants the thing done. So if one of the deans decides they want to do this thing and they run into one of our colleagues who is not tech savvy at all, in fact, I made her come to do the media site. We have a media site box and we're taping some things. And I asked her to just forward the PowerPoint, and she was nervous about that because I just needed a little bit of help, and she's not happy about the whole tech thing. But if she is over in the law school side, and she is very good friends with, for instance, Sandy Dallenberg, who's one of our big kahunas, and he says, "Can you do this thing?" She can't stand there and go, "Huh?" So she needs to be able to communicate that to us, and so that's what we want her to look good. We want the library to look good. We want we want to work together, and so this is one of the ways that we've been trying to really, get everybody, as Lila said, on the same page, technology-wise, even though we're all at different levels of experience.
And really, the next part of this is sort of once you're up on things, once you've heard of Twitter, you've heard of Adobe, once you start hearing about these tools, sort of figuring out if it's something that you guys want to invest time in, want to invest money in, this is what we sort of think through. This is what, especially things, even if they're free, they might not necessarily be free in terms of time or staffing energy. But what the first thing that we always try to think is the user. The user comes first. It is all about them, whether the user is our students or our faculty, public patrons, or whoever your institution is serving. And really, there's sort of two parts of this. Is sort of if you're, are you being, and not necessarily one is better than the other, but as far as being reactive, what are they already doing? Then, especially if it's something that your users are already doing and it's kind of mission critical, it's kind of, for us, it's a duh, that yes, you should be helping, supporting, you should know about this. A perfect example from our own institution that, we are kind of butting heads with some of the powers that be in our IT department is that we have a laptop requirement. We don't really tell them what kind of laptop they need, but all incoming students have to have a laptop. Our IT department is not supporting Vista yet. And as you can imagine, our 1Ls last year that, they come into law school, they buy their new Dell that, was on the special, whatever the deal was or whatever, they're using Vista. And so that's, for us, it's kind of a no-brainer that, if your users are already doing it, you can't ignore the fact that, it's not some kind of peripheral, we're not, do we really need to support this? They never, it's not a mission critical thing.
Same thing with Macs.
Exactly.
If people are walking in with Macs, you better support it.
That's a perfect example, because Mac, especially, it's one thing to say.
Mac lovers.
Yeah, it's one thing, there are schools out there that say, have a laptop requirement or have a computer, and they say, this is what you're buying, or they issue them. And that's one way to get around the problem if that's how you care to do it. But if you kind of have to assume that even if you don't have a laptop requirement, they're going to have a laptop or they're going to have some kind of computer. You need to support your users. So if it's being reactive, what are they already using? And sort of on a less mission critical thing, we found out, and we'll explain how we found it, that a huge number of our students are on Facebook. So it's one of those things that, hey, our users are already there. It's sort of, it's not a big hump for us if we get on there too, because the people are already there. We don't have to build it, they're already there. So, that's one way to think about it. What are they already doing? Or what can some sort of new technology or new tool offer them that we want to encourage them to use? And sometimes this is tricky because sometimes they're going to love you or hate you for this, because if it's something required, like some kind of exam software, because we have a laptop requirement, so they have to take exams on laptop and they have to install the software, and sometimes there's a learning curve. And earlier this year we installed new wireless printing, and there was a huge learning curve, and some of our students were not very happy with us because
A lot of them.
the instructions were very unclear and they were difficult to use. But if you can, it's kind of a mixture of sort of selling and education and marketing. If this is something you guys can use, and make it easy for them, because law faculty, they guard their time like it is theirs, and they're misers about it. They don't want to invest. A lot of them don't want to invest the time to say, oh, learn X, Y, Z. It's so awesome. And one example, I don't know how many of you guys are AALL members, but the Spectrum that just came out, they had a great article on wikis, using wikis in education. And I thought there was a really interesting point that they made that some of the students did not like using the wiki in their classroom. They used the MediaWiki software, which, if you're not familiar, is what Wikipedia runs on. And in order to edit something in MediaWiki, you kind of have to learn some basic markup language, as far as their sort of proprietary markup language, which for any of you guys that know any kind of HTML, it's not difficult. But if you've never done that kind of thing, it might be just a little too much for you to bother learning. And I think the students were kind of pushing back. They didn't really care for that. But there's other solutions, like Marin's Foreign and International Legal Research class this past semester in the spring. They used PBWiki, which is really, if you've ever used it, it's a WYSIWYG editor when you add things. So that, that's a way to get around it. It's sort of give them the path to least resistance, and if you can't give them an easy path, sell it to them, market it to them. This is going to make your life easier, with any kind of new software. One of the ways you can find out what they're already using, because sometimes you don't always know what they're using, is a tool we found very effective is surveying them. And we can all guess what they're doing, or suppose, or we can walk around the library or study areas and sort of go, oh, okay, we got a Mac user there, and someone's running Vista. But we found surveys to be very effective, finding out what they, we asked, we had a big survey in the beginning of the fall last year, and we said, ask them what do they use, how do they use it, and how we can help them do, use the library better, technology better. We were just trying to get some good information. And I think one of the reasons we had a relatively good response rate for a voluntary survey. We had about 225 responses out of a 700 students total. So for a voluntary survey, about the library and technology, we thought we did pretty well.
How did you do the survey? Was it online?
It was online. We used SurveyMonkey, which is a pretty. I think they have a free version, but the subscription price, you can go month by month for $20 or $25, and unlimited responses and unlimited questions. And there's a number of tools out there, and we found that very cost effective to use. And you can download the responses in PDF and HTML into Excel spreadsheets. So pretty bar charts, and we could see what they were using. And one of the reasons reasons I think it's important when we do surveys, because we need to tell our users why we're asking them. Sort of not give them the hard stuff, but just say, why are we asking? And one of the big things we said is, in the survey invitation, we said, we want to improve library services. We want to make the library and technology easier, better for you. And I think we had a lot of students respond to that they, okay, there's something in it for me. Because how many of you have gotten survey invitations for various things going, I'm doing a survey on X, here's the link. Okay, okay, I've got enough stuff going on. You know why? You're asking me to spend another 10 minutes on this survey, and I don't know what you're doing it for or why the information is going to help you. So that, and if you can offer an incentive, we gave away an iPod Shuffle, and especially now, I mean, if you can swing the expense of some kind of, heck, it could be a $10 Starbucks card. I mean, you'll get people just, okay, I'm on board with that. So that,
just to interject,
yeah,
we're actually lucky because I heard from other Florida SUS schools that they're not allowed to do this. I guess everyone's general counsel has their own set of what you can do as far as surveying students and giving them things. I'm saying pizza lunch might not fall under that, but we are actually able to give out things with our surveys, so we're in a better position than maybe some other people. But if you can, we heard about it from the students that they were excited about that. So.
And if surveys, I talked to some people that say, oh God, the minute we say survey, some schools are much more sensitive about, institutional review boards. The minute you talk about surveying students, are like, you have to go through IRB. Well, yeah, if your school is sensitive about that, yeah, by all means, be sensitive about that. But one other option, if you can't run a full-scale survey, like I said, pizza lunch. Grab pizza lunch, send out an invite, say, hey, we're looking for a dozen students to just talk to, sort of have a little mini focus group. Can we talk to you at lunch for a couple of times? We'll buy pizza. I mean, we all know law students will do about anything for a free pizza lunch or free, they'll come, especially if they want to give, law students are never short on opinions, so they'll, that's one way to sort of solicit. If you can, if surveys don't work for you, you want to try something else, or you want to start a more in-depth dialogue than just a survey. Some of the stuff that we found out interesting in our survey, what students, these were students using this at least one time a week or daily. 63% of them were using Instant Messenger, and 82% were using Facebook and or MySpace, one of those networks. And so we're like, I think the Facebook we had a feeling it was going to be high just because at any given point, if you'd walk around the library, you'd see someone's laptop open and they'd have their case books and materials, but their laptop would have Facebook on it. So, but that is a very high number, and that was sort of a lesson learned, like, hey, Facebook, maybe that's something we should be on. This number for instant messaging, we didn't realize that there wasn't that high of a number using instant messenger, and the lesson perhaps is we aren't doing IM reference, but maybe that's what maybe we should be with this high a number. If they're already on it, maybe we should be too.
Or maybe there's IM each other during class. But that's another survey.
On the flip side, other interesting results, students that rarely or never had used this, 90%, had either rarely or never used Second Life. And RSS, 89%. So, something like Second Life, we are, interesting technology. It's, I think there's a future in that kind of online environment. But you know what? That number tells us that it's probably not worth a huge investment in time right now for us. Getting people on Second Life. And there are law schools that have an active presence on there, and maybe their students are more into it, but ours aren't.
And we're jealous, but...
Yeah. But just saying, go ahead.
Yeah, we looked at Second Life like a year or two ago, and so we
Yeah. And
we survey the 1Ls every year.
Mm-hmm.
We had 100% who had never used it or rarely used it.
Yeah,
Most of them didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and that's exactly. And then RSS, I think there was a lot of people that didn't know what that was. And that's a tool, even though that was something that is a high number.
That was surprising to me because I don't know about the rest of you, but like a year or so ago, maybe 2 years, it was all about RSS, and we were having, you know, clinics and learning what it was, and this is our students now, and they don't care.
Yeah.
When you're teaching legal research, is that something that you then focus on teaching it instead of?
Well, actually, when I do international and foreign legal research, and we did a PB Wiki, and I chose that particular thing based on a CALI presentation I went to last year at UNLV. I thought some of the best things that I heard last year were the kind of comparisons between the different, you know, the different, there's wiki spaces, and there's PB Wiki, and there's Zoho Wiki, and trying to choose the best one of those. And so, and I have a wiki, I have a 2-year wiki story that I'll tell you in 2 seconds, but yeah, we want to know these things because you know, we can barely get the law students interested in they're excited about the wiki now that they've done it, but the first day when I was explaining it, they were like, you know, something else to learn. And I don't blame them, because at some level, it wasn't that long ago that I was in law school, and I felt like my head was going to explode every day, especially during first year and the beginning of second year. So if somebody had told me we're going to start doing a wiki, I might have freaked out completely. So they were really good about it.
And I think, you know, I think these numbers, they're telling as far as, you know, what kind of investment, you know, if it's something, oh gosh, Second Life. Really what it comes down to is, do we feel strongly enough about a tool or a resource that we're going to put in the effort to educate our students and to, you know, to market it to students? Because quite honestly, I mean, if I took an informal survey in this room right now, I think most of us would say RSS is a phenomenal tool to use as far as keeping up, you know, whether you are law faculty or in the technology side or a librarian, you know. That's the only way I read blogs now is through RSS feeds. You know, it's
I have one, but I don't read it all the time.
No, but you know, just keep it. That's the way I keep up, and I know a lot of us. That's the way we keep up. So that's something that. Okay, sorry, guys.
Well, I just wanted to ask on the RSS. Did you include, you know, iGoogle page or blog lines page or a mine?
I think we kind of put in parentheses like, you know, blog lines or net vibes. I think we did sort of specify, you know, sort of examples, but
like the readers.
Yeah, the
not
reader, you know,
just, you know, do you use RSS, but more like, you know, a couple of examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick on the RSS. So what that's telling you is that creating your own feed, serving it is not such a good idea. However, we do have the RSS feed from Jurist on our library.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I had that at my last. In fact, I set that up on at my last law school, where I was electronic services librarian, and that was very popular. But I don't think anybody realized what that was. That was like, to them, that was like Bloomberg. You know, it was like turning on the TV and something scrolled by. I mean, that's, you know, I was watching the news the other day, and they said that people, young people now are more tech savvy than ever, and have less understanding about what's going on behind the scenes. And that's nobody's fault, and that's, you know, it's great in one way because everybody's using it, and it's not good in another way because they don't understand really what the great thing that's happening is. So maybe they are using RSS, it's being fed to them by their website or by some other application. So, you know, there's always you can fudge the numbers however you want, right?
Yeah, but I think it really comes down to, you know, how, you know, if we believe in it, we need to market it, we need to educate them. I mean, I try to work in, you know, we do research workshops at lunchtime for students, and, you know, whenever I talk about a specific topic or area of law, you know, when I talk about current awareness tools, or how to keep up in patent law, or how to keep up in employment law, you know, I tell them, hey, you know, there's all these great legal blogs out there, and instead of, you know, clicking to each one, you know, you can all set them up so they all sort of come to you, and that kind of clicks with them because it's sort of, oh, you mean I can do this and it's going to come to me, you know, sort of, it's getting pushed to me rather I have to go out and find it. So, you know, we can sneak it in. You know, we have less success when we try to do a workshop on about blogs. I mean,
Yeah.
no one shows up about that. But, you know, if we work it into, you know, okay, you know, we're doing a workshop on, you know, writing a seminar paper, and which gets a lot of people in the door because they'll have to write seminar papers. Here's how to find some cool up-to-the-minute topics, and they respond that way if we sell it to them that way.
We especially, I mean, as far as Second Life goes, I know that we're getting really low numbers on what anybody is doing with that, and some schools are really excited about it, and some schools are not. And this is, I think, one of the things where we've anyway decided to kind of sit on the sidelines and keep an eye out, because I'm excited about it. I don't get to do it, and we have so many issues with technology on our campus that we're unable to access it. And
well, that's a great segue into
yeah.
our sort of next consideration. The other thing, you know, to consider when you want to sort of jump on the bandwagon or not jump on the bandwagon is sort of all the money and people issues. So.
Oh, and money and people, that's me.
But the segue about Second Life about
yeah.
free is not always free.
It's not always free. Yeah, you know, you can get yourself an avatar. Mine's named Marin Mariani, which when that happened, I was like, you have to pick your own last name from a list. I'm like, wow, that's perfect. I thought, here we go, I'm going to be able to do this. And my director actually a year and a half ago asked me to give a short presentation on Second Life, because it was kind of the thing. USF, is anybody here from USF? Okay, I can talk about them then. They actually have a desk in Second Life. They have a librarian that sits in Second Life manning a reference desk, which is fantastic. And I wonder where they got their equipment from, because I can't connect to Second Life with my computer as it was for the past year and a half. My video card was not powerful enough. So, you know, we talked to IT, they had to open ports, they didn't want to do that because of this and that firewalls. And I understand that completely. Like I said, I have an MIS degree, I'm on board with that. But the fact is, my director asked me to do this thing. I can't tell you how many man-hours it took for the computer services librarian, the electronic services librarian, and I to try to work on this. We spent a lot of man-hours, and none of us are cheap, to try to figure out how to do this. And as of now, a year and a half later, we're still not on. With FCLA money, we just were able to buy new computers for most of our librarians and staff. And Elizabeth, were you able to get on?
No, we're still having network issues, but it's not. You know, it's kind of, you know, one of these things that, you know, so much for a free resource when we've invested a lot of time into it.
We've spent money.
Well, it's just some of these things, they become popular among the people who like to play with them. At UNC, you can find a image of the Wilson Library up on Second Life. I've seen tours. I know some people have had classes. But we have an information school there, and those are the folks who are really interested. There's a virtual reference desk for getting medical information, but that's on National Library of Medicine grant. And the person, at least one of the people who are doing it, is working on their PhD at the School of Information and Library Science. I'm not entirely sure how many people are using it who are not, I don't know, plugged into that type of group.
Well, I've actually kind of, one of the reasons we're sitting on the sidelines with Second Life is because all of this new information has come out and the survey came out. But when I first heard about it, I was at a PSPC meeting with all of the Public Services Committee members, and we saw a presentation, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Let's see if we can, you know, do. The fact is that we haven't been able to do it, and we just can't get buy-in for it. And even though we haven't spent actual money, I can't tell you how many man-hours we've spent, which is actual money. So this comes under the heading of, you know, free things aren't always free. We've been trying to make it work, and we haven't been able to do so. I think that there's something out there that can be very interesting for law, but we're not there yet. But I do want someone to be ready in case the dean says, I saw this cool thing. It's called Second Life.
Here and then in the back.
All right, I'll hold off on Seminole jokes.
I see that gator on your shirt.
I'm sitting right in front of me with a gator on. Oh, God. Okay.
You guys
go
did
for
well
it.
so far. I'm from the IT department at the University of Florida, and to hear reference librarians talking about all these new technologies and stuff, I mean, it's kind of nice. Is this something you guys just self-initiated, or like your director came in and said, I want you guys to stay up on all the new stuff? Or
Well,
where did this come from?
It did come from our director. I mean, we do have some people, myself included, that are interested in sort of technology, and a lot of the reference librarians, that we work with, they might not, they're the ones sending us emails going, what's Twitter? And a couple, we kind of reached a critical mass, and, they've been taught, the reference librarian I'm talking about that mentioned, what's Twitter, had also talked to our director going, I'm kind of interested about this. And so at the sort of, we hit a critical mass, and our director was like, you know what, this would be kind of neat if you could sort of alternate, talk about, some of these different technologies. And it's not just us talking at these meetings about, like, here's this new tool. I mean, the same librarian that Mary mentioned that was like, do I want to be advancing this
touch
PowerPoint?
media site.
Yeah. Is also a Flickr fanatic. I mean, knows all about Flickr. And so we said, hey, can you give us a little rundown, a little presentation about all the cool things we can do with Flickr? So it did come from our director, but, I guess we kind of have the luxury and privilege that our library runs relatively as a flat organization, that there's a lot of, I can go directly to, who I need to talk to and say, hey, I got this idea. And so I guess sort of coming from that context that, we know that not everyone has that kind of structure, but
we also have a number of librarians that have technology backgrounds. So for instance, I do mostly faculty research now, but I was an electronic services librarian, and I do have an MIS degree. So I came in knowing I wasn't going to do that, but I'm very interested in that. And our director teaches cyberspace law. So we're a collection of people that a lot of us really like IT. And we also get a lot of questions from our faculty who we have a really good relationship with. So one of, the associate deans will wander into the office and say, I really want this, Wilson Web, what's that thing? And, so we get all kinds of questions about research, about new technologies. And, like I said, the dean will see something and want us to show him what it is. And that's how Elizabeth was showing him how to put his Facebook picture up just a couple, months ago. And so I think we're fortunate in that way, because we can kind of, figure out what all these new technologies are. I don't know how our IT department loves us, but we try to be nice to them. I gave them a whole bag of M&Ms the last time I asked.
Actually,
Yeah.
Sure.
I have two questions for you. The first one is going back to your survey. Obviously, you learned that IM and Facebook are wonderful. What did you do with that? Did you open up IM? Did you now start some sort of a Facebook club? What is the business practical purpose of learning this stuff?
We have not yet done anything with IM, although that is something kind of on a sort of, we're developing, sort of thinking about, like, okay, because that was sort of a surprise to us that we hadn't even thought about, how many of our students are on IM. So that is something that we're working on, that, okay, we need to seriously consider offering some kind of IM reference.
But what to do so that it doesn't go out of control.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
anybody has ideas.
We'll talk to you about that.
Okay, sounds good. The other thing with Facebook is we initially have, starting last fall, we had a Facebook group. We had enough. I think we've had 125, 130 students join the group, and we were able to sort of push notices out to them. Hey, we're having a workshop, or we have these new resources out there. For those of you in the know about Facebook, Facebook is kind of for institutions. They've developed a new thing called Facebook Pages, and we're in the process of sort of transitioning that group to a page. So if you're not up on Facebook, you can sort of ignore all that mumbo jumbo. We do have a presence on Facebook that is visible to students and to the world at large. So, and then we're kind
The
of
practical application, I have to tell you that I have had a Facebook page since I was forced to do so by my job. I've refused to have a MySpace page forever because, you know, there's also a site called My Death Space, and everybody that dies on MySpace becomes My Death Space. And if you haven't seen it, it's really creepy. Check it out. You can get an obituary, and I was like, I'm not having any of that. But apparently there's no My Death Facebook. So I said, okay, I put up a Facebook page. And even though we've had, you know, the dean was happy that we were on it, and he has a page, and, you know, I've had pies thrown at me, and I've had drinks given to me, and I've had friends I haven't seen in years, and it's a time suck. But it's, I mean, you know, we are pushing out information to people that we might not ordinarily get. They don't read their email at school. Does anybody else have people that don't ever read their email at school? Their school? My email is, you know, hotlawstudent109@yahoo. Like, no, I can't reach you there. I need you to read your school email. So, you know, we try to get everybody that we can, and Facebook is one way. So I think it's good. It's not the only way, but if I showed you my account, you would just laugh. It's ridiculous.
But sort of to bring, you know, talking about, you know,
Funding, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Back to
Sort
what I
of
was talking
money,
about.
you know, money's always a big thing, especially, you know, I mean, unless, you know, if you work for a law school that's like, here's all the money you need. Tell me afterwards, because,
Yeah.
you know, I'm interested. No, but, you know, everyone has, you know, there's always more things you want to do than you have money to do them, so the funding is an important
Well,
issue.
and even though the state of Florida is going broke and doesn't want to give us any money, we have this FCLA money. So one of the things I wanted to come back to was the getting creative with funding. We have a digitization project that each of the law schools in Florida contributes to, and
Contributes money to.
Contributes money to.
And we run it. So.
We actually do the scanning and the putting it up online and hosting it, and we actually have been able to solve some funding issues internally by using someone that we might have had to let go. We transitioned them into that project, and now that project is going strong. But it initially was something that all the schools got together and did. So, you know, if you want to do something, figuring out a way to get a consortium involved or get a set of schools that are interested involved is a good way to solve some funding issues.
And to give you a little bit of background, you know, in a nutshell, why we're able to make this digitization project work is what we digitize are Florida Supreme Court records and briefs. So all the, you know, briefs and everything, you know, we're starting to get, you know, actually oral arguments online. It's a huge and valuable resource, and since we're the school in Tallahassee, in the capital, we can, you know, basically we have someone that walks up the street a block and brings back a cart of stuff and we scan it. And that's a really fantastic way if you have sort of ideas that maybe not, you know, sort of big ideas that won't just benefit you, but benefit a larger group. Getting a group of people or outside funding, I mean, quite honestly, we run stats on, you know, how many visitors we get. The number one reason people visit, like, the Florida State Law's website is people are looking for Florida Supreme Court records and briefs.
Right.
We get a huge amount of traffic. I mean, I can tell you, just I was looking at our stats on Friday, or on Monday, and, you know, we had people from Canada and Panama, you know, pulling briefs off. I don't know if it's people that are interested in finding out Jack Thompson's latest antics. If you're a video game person, you might know Jack Thompson, the lovely Florida attorney. Go ahead.
Are you using Google Analytics for that?
Yes, we are. I mean, I should touch on that in a second too. So.
Well, let me talk about training real quick,
Sure.
Because training is it's not a sore point. I love it. I'm being videoed, right? I love it. We have an OPAC that we share. It's called Mango, and I've sworn to never say that to anyone. So, you know, you're special, so I've called it Mango. There we go. That was something that the OPEC subcommittee picked as the name. It's actually an Indica interface overlaying a library management system called Olive. And we have a lot of issues with this particular library catalog, mostly because it no longer works properly. But the big problem that I have is that it's train yourself. We get a training from FCLA, who is, kind of manages all this, and they make a team, and then that team is supposed to train everyone. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And some of the problems that we've encountered are that communication issues. We have, I believe, 8 libraries dispersed among FSU campus. And for instance, I'm in charge of circulation, hadn't been in charge of circulation for long. And they said, we need circulation people on this team because we're implementing a new version of the catalog. And I was like, okay. And then the next thing I knew was that I was supposed to be training everyone in circulation. This seems to me poor planning because I have no idea anything about the circulation module. So the fact that I was supposed to be training people kind of made me laugh. I mean, I actually went to the training session that wound up being created because I had no clue. I didn't even know my own login and password at the point that I had taken over the department. So, best practices here, try to get the people that know what they're doing involved in the project. And that's like an ongoing problem with these implementations that we get statewide. We had a discussion earlier. I see one of my FIU colleagues across the way, and the minute I heard that she was from FIU, we started, haranguing each other about our catalog. It's not a good implementation to not train people effectively and quickly. And it's something that is endemic to the system, and we still haven't figured out a way to deal with it because it's not us, it's everyone, and it kind of trickles down. So that's something that we're still looking at. This is an example of something that we haven't solved. We're kind of trying to get ready for the next rollover into the higher system of Olive to see how can we fix this so that we haven't had good training the first time we got it, we haven't had good training the second time we got it, we're hoping third time's a charm. So these kind of best practices and analyzing how to do things better, we're still in the process of it too.
Staffing, yeah, just real quickly, thinking of staffing issues too as a consideration, we have a perfect example of sort of unanticipated sort of consequences of thinking out something that we have started using a lot is MediaSite. And I don't know how many of you have used MediaSite or you have those boxes at your school.
How many do you have MediaSite?
Okay.
Why? Because it's a huge amount of money, right? Like
you might have similar products out there, but essentially it's a product from a company called Sonic Foundry, or I think they're still called Sonic Foundry. But it's basically a computer in a box, and you set it up with you hook in like a laptop here and a video camera here, and it allows it sort of integrates them all in one as far as presenting a streaming PowerPoint and video presentation. That if we had MediaSite hooked up right now, we could be streaming my PowerPoint in one window and like a video of us in another window. So it's become a very popular thing, not only for us to record things that might be useful for later for students that couldn't attend a class or couldn't attend a lecture, but I know a lot of schools do use that kind of thing for CLE, that they videotape at their schools. As it turned out, it is so popular that really our IT department has essentially had to assign one of its people to be sort of the MediaSite guy, who is the person that has to scurry around all over the law school whenever it is needed. We need it hooked up, or we need it, a professor wants to videotape their lecture. So that's kind of an unintended, not unintended, I should say, unanticipated consequence of, this cool new IT tool
That we bought.
that the library bought with its money, but it's become so popular over the law school that the staffing issue is huge. I mean, that's an investment when you have to sort of devote someone. I know some schools might have a dedicated AV people or a whole AV staff that would handle it, but it's just kind of an example of sort of who's going to have to do this and who is going to have to sort of take, once you have it, once you've, once you've trained people up on it, who's going to have to sort of take custody for it, who's actually going to have to keep the ongoing thing with it.
And I just wanted to interject. We actually decided to kind of take that back as much as we can because it isn't really fair for, our IT department is fairly small. They have to do law school, they have to do library, and that was taking up time from someone who needed to do something else. So we got ourselves together and we, trained ourselves on it. And we're hoping that will take the burden off of the IT guy whose life it became. So, sitting down and kind of brainstorming, how can we figure out how to, get a better relationship with the IT department and not push this off on us is hopefully going to work better than the way we had it set up prior to us actually learning how to use it.
So I'm seeing that,
We're running out of time.
Running on time. Sort of the last thing to consider that we want to think out, sort of external considerations, and I want to touch really quick on security and privacy, and I'm touching on it, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, not to say it's not important or not significant, because it really, really is, but a lot of you are already up on this. And I think it's important when we think about these kinds of, sort of new toys, new technologies, to think, we really need to give a good look at the sort of security and privacy implications, because a lot of traditional might not be the right word, but standard sort of university IT is heavily vetted as far as, the campus wireless network, the sort of course management systems. I mean, those get vetted and those are put through usually a pretty stringent process as far as making sure they're secure and making sure, privacy considerations, if you, just what's required by law and what's just being a good citizen as far as protecting students and faculty's information. But some stuff, these new tools, you might not even realize what information is being put out there and what sort of you're exposing faculty or students to. And depending on what you're doing, it may be important or may not be important. One example, sort of in the realm of there are concerns, but the trade-off was okay, was we installed Google Analytics on our library's website. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Google Analytics is a free tool from Google. You essentially put a tiny little bit of code on all your web pages, and it sort of phones home to Google with all kinds of really, really great tracking stats. And for a free stats package, it's phenomenal, the level of detail that we get off of who's visiting, how long they're spending, just all kinds of web traffic data. In exchange for that, we get this information and Google gets this information. So for us, the compromise was not a hard one. We just said, we really need this information badly, and we don't really, if Google really wants to know that, everyone loves this Florida Supreme Court records and briefs or part of our website, then that's fine. That was something that we weighed it. Okay, we liked the data more, and we thought giving them our traffic information was not a consideration. On the flip side, a tool that we sort of said no-go, we are not even going to mention this to our students. Again, on Facebook, one of the applications you can install on Facebook is a Blackboard application that will integrate. It'll draw in the Blackboard data if you use Blackboard as your course management tool. I had looked at it for about a second, and I started looking at it, and I realized in order to install this application in my profile on Facebook, I had to give them my Blackboard login. And I don't know if at your school, but our Blackboard login, FSU sort of operates under a sort of a one ID system. So the same ID I use for Blackboard is the same one that gets used for when I do my payroll information. When I do my, if I register for courses or pay for the, my just personal data is out there. So I said, there's no way in heck am I giving
Holy
Facebook
grail.
my FSU ID. So that was something we weighed and said, okay, privacy, security, it's too risky. We aren't going to jump on board with that. So that was one, just sort of something that we had looked at. So, and briefly to sort of hit on marketing and outreach, I'm just going to I don't want to suck up too much time here, but just sort of, and I think our Florida Supreme Court Records and Brief project is a great example of sort of externally what we actually created a lot of goodwill and publicity from other libraries, from the legal community that we have. These, we jumped on certain IT bandwagons. Facebook is one example that we have a presence on Facebook. That means everyone can see us, whether it's incoming students, prospective students, and if anything we can do sort of make ourselves look good and get the word out, outreach to the public or other universities. That's something not a serious some serious consideration. It's more icing on the cake if you can say, hey, we have this cool idea with this cool new tool. And oh, by the way, it could also be a nice marketing thing. It's kind of maybe icing on the cake if you need to get people to buy in or help, get the decision made. So
I guess we could close with one last thing. We have a library tour at the beginning of each 1L week when they come in. And I think that is becoming so important because it's less about where the books are. I mean, they walk in and they see the books and they're like, books. But we, at the end of the tour, sit down with them in a circle. We have the person who's the 1L liaison, which was previously Margaret Clark and is now Elizabeth. We have either myself or the Director of Public Services sit down and really talk to them. We also include either the director or the associate director. And we tell them all the things that we can do for them, all of the technology that we know, all of the ways that we can hook them up. And those are the things that stick with them because they come to my office, as 2Ls, and they're asking me where Flodger is. And I know we told them that, and they learned it all the first year, but they didn't listen to that part. But what they do know is that if they need something technology-oriented, they'll come to my office and ask me about that, and they'll come right away for that because that's the thing they heard. When they ask me for something, I Google, and they're excited about that. I don't know why.